Welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast, where we are going to be discussing the concepts of health, wealth, leadership, and legacy. My name's Chad. I will be your host, joined here by my co-host, Bob Stewart. Bob, what's the word for the day?
Chad, today's word is priority.
Ooh, priority. An excellent one, Bob. I look forward to hearing a little bit more about that. Today's podcast, we're going to jump into a conversation with Ben Kinney where he talks about the term finite resources and what that means to him. I remember probably about a decade ago when this one hit Ben, he came running into the office to talk about this concept. Bob, we're going to have Ben tell us about it. Yet what is it everybody should be listening for through this podcast conversation?
I think Chad, the one thing that really jumps out at me, and it's probably because I've struggled with this throughout my career, is how many times you have to say no, right, to get to that yes. And a lot of people will just take on everything and anything that comes their way, but I think highly successful individuals figure out how to say no. So be listening for Ben's talk around saying no, right? Which is really hard for a lot of people to do.
All right, let's jump to the conversation. So Ben, there's this concept that you have called finite resources. And I really think we should take some time and jump into that for us because that covers everything that Win, Make, Give is about with the health, wealth, leadership, and legacy. So break those two words down for us and let's just start there. Finite resources.
Sure. To me, finite is the opposite of infinite, which means fixed. You have a fixed amount of things. Like there's only so many pieces of beef jerky in the jar, right? If we take a piece of beef jerky out, now we have less jerky in the jar. And for us, the jar is our life or our world and so on.
Okay. So that's finite. Resources.
We normally think about resources in a tangible way, like natural resources. So what's a natural resource?
Wood, water,
gold,
right?
oil, cheeseburgers.
Right? The important ones.
Yeah. Well, what we're saying is there's a fixed amount of gold that exists in the world, right? There's a fixed amount of water. There's a fixed amount of oxygen, right? At any moment in time. And because of that, because there being a fixed amount, so if we add the words together, a finite resource, we have to understand that if we use all the water in the world, we're going to have none left. If we use up all the gold, we're going to have none left. We use up all the fish, we're going to have none left. Finite resources says there is a fixed amount of something of value.
Okay, but you're not talking about natural resources. You're not getting onto some soapbox here and talking about we shouldn't be drilling or anything like that. You're talking about different resources in this case.
I think about finite resources and how they affect our lives or ourselves. So if we think about our worlds, our personal lives, Bob, what is something that you have that there's a fixed amount of? Time.
Love.
Money, yeah. Energy, right? Happiness. Like what you'd say at any given moment, if we were to break out our wallets and look in there, we have a fixed amount of money at this second. Not that we couldn't make more in the future or we haven't had more or less in the past, right? It's that there's a fixed amount. Well, time, there's just a fixed amount, period. Now, I don't know how long you're going to live or how long you're going to live, a lot longer than us, probably, right? But there's a fixed amount of it. And energy, there's a fixed amount too. Not that you and I have the same amount of energy, is that we each have a fixed amount of energy every single day. Well, how this shows up in our world is that if we use up all of our energy at work, when you boys get home to your honey bunnies, you don't have any energy for your honey bunnies. Bob, how many kids do you have at home?
I got 3 kids.
3 kids. So you get home and you use up all your energy at work, right? You don't have any energy left for those 3 kids, and I'm sure that they demand some energy.
Yeah, I have a 2 and a 3-year-old. It's just nonstop energy. Absolutely.
Yeah. If we have a business and we invest a little bit of money into this new source of leads or this new source of advertiser marketing, it's not that we have a fixed amount of money to spend on that. We have to understand that by doing so, we're taking money away from something else we could have spent on, invested in, right, marketed, etc. Now, if we use time with somebody that's let's say a bad employee. We invest an hour today trying to fix a bad employee. Not only did we take time away for ourselves, we took time away from investing in a good employee, somebody that gives 150%, somebody that's loyal and positive and brings energy, right? we have to understand that finite resources creates a rule just like physics. And the rule for me is if you give to one, you must take from another. So if I give time to something, the key is I have to understand that I'm taking time away from other things. If I give energy to someone or something, I have to understand that I'm taking that energy away from something else. And we have to understand that there's a consequence to that.
That's interesting because people make decisions in a void generally, right?
Yeah.
They're not thinking about, they're just, is this good or bad? It's not, is this good or bad in the context of everything else that this could be going towards?
The most common thing that people would say is, I'd feel bad if I didn't spend my time today doing this thing. And I'd say, great. It's because you aren't putting it into perspective. If you said, by spending time with this crappy employee, I'm taking time away from my child or my spouse or somebody that I love, you might be a little bit different. But you don't. You act like time is infinite, but it's not. It's fixed. Does that make sense? Yeah. We have to understand that if we give time, money, or energy to one thing, there's going to be less left over. And what I want you to do is I want you to get pissed about it. I want you to understand that everything that you do is taken away from one of those resources so that we can make better choices next time with those resources.
Now, time's a very easy one to understand. There's 1,440 minutes in the day, 24 hours, however you want to break it down. We know that there's a set number. That one makes complete sense. Money, obviously, I only have so much in the bank at the moment. Now, I can go into debt. That's something we don't want to get into, yet there's that. Yet you talk about energy and you talk about love falling into this, yet someone will say, well, have another child. All of a sudden, Bob doesn't love the third child less than the first two because he didn't have any more love. Talk about energy and love in this finite resource concept.
Sure. So the reason that I bring those up is that we all have a fixed amount of time and energy to show things like love. Or we only have a fixed amount of energy, and at the end of the day we come home and we don't have it left over for somebody else, but we don't look and see that there's consequences to that. So let me rephrase it or put it into perspective. You get home and you've had a really rough day at work, and you go to your child or your spouse and you say, not now, I had a bad day. What you basically did is you used up all your happiness, all your energy, all your love, all those emotions during the day, and you had none left over for the people that you say are the most important to you. Now, if I was to ask you to say, take a piece of paper, write down the two names of the two most important people in your life.
Okay.
Just write them down. Who would you write down?
My wife and my daughter.
Am I close third, sixth?
You'll fall in the top something.
Bob, you'd write down.
Well, on a given day, my wife, and then whichever kid I decide is my favorite that particular day. Right now, it's Carter. But.
So we write down these two people, and then I have to ask yourself, if these are the two most important people in your life, and you live and breathe them, and they're the ones that you love, and so on, do you use most of your time? Do you spend most of your time with them? Do you reserve most of your energy when you get home? Right? Do you have all those things left over every single day to make sure that they know that they're most important? And the reality is, if I said, show me your calendar, most of us don't have them as the most important thing there, right? Or we use up all of our energy and happiness at work, so when we get home, we don't have anything left over to show them or to give them, right? And then it goes down this rabbit trail of things falling apart. I started thinking about this early with this concept that we talk about, I care about my hourly wage. I had to start understanding that if I spent time with a unmotivated seller or buyer, I was taking time away from working with a motivated seller or buyer.
Right.
If I spent time with an unmotivated employee, I was taking time away from a motivated employee. And it goes on and goes on. But what happens, we don't always tell that story. We get home at the end of the day and your honey bunny says, well, how was your day? And you say, gosh, I worked really hard. I got a lot of things done, and sorry I'm late for dinner, and I know that I missed the soccer game, and blah, blah, blah. Because if you went home and you told the truth, you'd be in deep shit. You got home and you said, here's what I did. You're not going to believe this. I got to work, and then one of my employees came in and they told me about their weekend and how they had this fight with their boyfriend, girlfriend, and And then what I did is I walked out and I started talking to one of my sales guys. Not the good ones, actually, the worst one. And I tell you, he can't sell shit. But I spent about an hour talking to him about closing, even though he's never closed even a frickin' door in his life, right? And then what I did is I went out and I met with this customer. It's the worst paying, always pays late, always pays me the least, and always has the most drama. And I spent a bunch of time on that. And then I went into 2 meetings where we accomplished nothing. Right? And then I stayed late because I still had my actual work to get done instead of making it to the soccer game and being home for dinner. Right? If we went and we said that story, you get punched right in the face.
Well, yeah, sure, it sounds bad when you say it that way.
Right? But that's the truth. That's the truth of how we spent time. That's the truth of how we spent our energy that day. That's the truth of how we spent, right, our happiness, our money, and so on, because we don't understand that there's a corresponding no to every yes.
Wow. There he goes again, dropping nuggets of wisdom all over the place. Bob, before we go to you to get your aha, I have to send some love to my mom. Ben put us on the spot. He asked for who those 2 people are in your life. And, well, of course, I said my wife and I said my daughter. I want Mom to know that, of course, love her too.
You have 1 daughter. I have 3 sons. So I had to leave 2 of my boys out, right? My wife and whoever happens to be my favorite son at that time got in. Today it might be Carter, but yeah, so I feel...
It's okay. I think most parents with more than 1 kid probably understood exactly how you said that, Bob.
Yeah.
Yet, why don't you give us your aha from what came from that conversation with Ben?
I think my biggest aha, and again, I mentioned this in the beginning, is that the concept of saying no, when you say yes to the wrong things, you're robbing from maybe the right thing, right? Or the things that should have been your priorities, you rob from those things all day long, and every yes is taking away from something else. And so that, I don't know, it just really, every time I hear him talk about this, it gets driven home a little bit more, and it helps me get better at setting priorities in my life.
Sure. You'll hear when Ben calls you out on it, or when he calls me or any of us out on it, that you skipped your workout to say yes to somebody to help them out, or you skipped that time with your wife or with one of your kids or whatever the situation was. You don't even realize we're doing it half the time until it's too late.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right, well, share your ahas with us wherever, however, comment, message, send information to us. We'd love to hear what you guys are getting from this. And make sure you subscribe to the podcast, however you are choosing to follow the podcast, wherever it is. And you can also watch these conversations on YouTube if you want. Just go to the winmakegive.com website, find the link, check us out, see what it looks like. We'll look forward to seeing you on our next episode.